Rise today in strong support of H.R. 5780, the Safe Communities Act. Last month, a teenager from my district in Antioch, Illinois, went to Kenosha, Wisconsin, where he allegedly killed 2 people with an AR-15 style rifle. The next day, I heard from another constituent, a mother who lives in the alleged shooter's hometown. She wrote, quote, "There's a militia cell in Antioch that's becoming more and more emboldened to take the law into their own hands. I am becoming fearful to send my children to the same schools as white supremacist militia members." I share my constituents' concerns with the rise of domestic violent extremism in this country. FBI Director Wray recently testified before the House Homeland Security Committee that white supremacist extremists are a leading threat to our nation. I believe we must do more to address the root causes of violent behavior, and I look forward to continuing to work with my colleagues in Congress to make America a place where racism, misogyny, and other forms of hate can no longer flourish. Meanwhile, in the face of extremist threats like these, we must take immediate action to secure our critical infrastructure and make soft targets less vulnerable to attack. In addition to domestic extremists, our suburban and rural communities face too many other threats of mass violence. Just last year, 5 of our neighbors, 4 of whom were my constituents, were killed by an act of gun violence at the Henry Pratt Company in Aurora, Illinois. Our workplaces, schools, and places of worship are far too vulnerable to mass shootings and other forms of targeted violence. This bill seeks to fix that. Rural and suburban communities like mine in northern Illinois are increasingly targets of violence, but often don't have access to the federal resources they need to protect themselves. That's why I introduced H.R. 5780, the Safe Communities Act of 2020, bipartisan legislation to help better protect soft targets in communities like mine. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency's Protective Security Advisors help improve security at schools, places of worship, and other soft targets, but there are too few of them to meet the demand of their services. H.R. 5780 would require CISA to maintain an online security resource clearinghouse to provide security guidance and best practices, serving as a one-stop shop for school districts, religious organizations, and local officials to find the information they need to keep their communities safe. The bill would also require CISA to develop a stakeholder outreach and operational engagement strategy and implementation plan to ensure that the agency is delivering infrastructure security services across sectors and throughout regions. Finally, H.R. 5780 would authorize a PSA Force Multiplier Pilot Program, which would require CISA PSAs to train state, local, and tribal and territorial officials to perform security, vulnerability, and terrorism risk assessments. These risk assessments are an important part of qualifying for FEMA's security grants. The Force Multiplier Program will help expand access to them. I am proud that the Safe Communities Act of 2020 has been endorsed by the Jewish Federations of North America and the Anti-Defamation League. I would like to thank my colleague, Mr. Katko, for joining me in introducing this measure. I'm grateful for his collaboration and leadership as ranking member of the Subcommittee on Cybersecurity, Infrastructure Protection, and Innovation. And I want to extend my sincere appreciation to the Homeland Security Committee staff for their work on this legislation. I urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to support this legislation today to make sure every community in America has the resources it needs to keep people safe.